Congressman Obie is going to be on with ABC News in this interview, and he's got a really interesting new idea on how to pay for the Afghanistan war. I'm sure Senator Lieberman will sign on to this. I look forward to that. So let's watch.
So tell me what it is you want to do on funding for the war.
If we have to pay for the health care bill, we should pay for the war as well.
How?
By having a war surtax. The problem in this country with this issue is that the only people who've been asked to sacrifice are military families, and they've had to go to the well again and again and again and again, and everybody else is blithely unaffected by the war.
And a tax on what? How would you actually do it?
It's a surtax on income.
Just straight across the board?
No, it's a graduated tax. I want the president and every American to think ahead of time about what it means if you do add to our involvement in Afghanistan. I'm no military strategist, but I don't believe we have the tools to accomplish our mission in Afghanistan, because you have to have a functioning, effective government, and there isn't one in Afghanistan. There isn't one in Pakistan either, in my view. And so, on the merits, I think it's a mistake to deepen our involvement. But if we are going to do that, then at least we ought to pay for it, because if we don't pay for it, then the cost of the Afghan war will wipe out every other initiative that we have to try to rebuild our own economy. That's what happened with the Vietnam War, which wiped out the Great Society. That's what happened with the Korean War, that wiped out Harry Truman's Square Deal. That's what happened with the end of the progressive movement back in the before the 20s, when we went into World War I. In each case, the costs of those wars shut off our ability to afford anything else.
All right, now look, it's nearly an inarguable point. Okay, now I up until a month ago supported the Afghanistan war and thought that we should have stayed in there longer. Now, if David Obie came to me and said, well, then okay, then we have to pay for it and we have to do this tax surcharge, you know what I'd have said? Obviously. What, we get to have wars and not pay for them? There's got to be a way to pay for it. If we have to pay for health care, and we do, why don't we have to pay for the wars? Why are we not allowed to do deficit spending for your health care and my health care, but we're allowed to do deficit spending for wars that we're not entirely sure we can win, and we're not even entirely sure what the goals are? Well, that doesn't make no kind of sense, even if you like the war. And I thought Obama had the right strategy until the fraudulent elections in Afghanistan. Should we pay for it? Of course we should pay for it. Now, that's not the way Washington works, and that's why David Obie doing this juxtaposition is so important. He begins to change the dialogue, so David Gregory asks questions like he did to Joe Lieberman. Hey, wait a minute. Why don't you have stringent requirements to pay for the wars, but you do for health care? Why is it that the domestic policies, as Obie points out, always get the short end of the stick, and the wars always get funded no matter what, even if we don't pay for it? Now, the other reason why that proposal is obviously brilliant is because now when you ask people to raise their taxes even 1% to pay for a war, you think that war is going to happen? That war is over instantly, okay? But if you think that 1% is bad, asking the richest people to pay 5% more for the war? Oh, that war's gone! It's gone. You like it, you don't like it. You think it makes sense, it doesn't make sense. It's necessary, unnecessary. No one cares. That Afghanistan war will be over yesterday. Now, the reality of it is, I don't think this is going to pass. Well, it's way too sensible. It doesn't have nearly enough support. And the serious people in Washington will tut-tut and say, oh, David Obie, aren't you cute? Paying for wars. That's not what we do in Washington. Well, look, if you like the war, you got to come up with the money somehow. Rich people, you like wars? How you like this war? How you like a 5% surtax? Probably not a lot. All right, he's got one more thing he wants to say here, so let's go to clip number 8 here.
And you think there is a risk that if we do continue to go in deeper into Afghanistan, that it could wipe out President Obama's domestic agenda?
I think $900 billion over 10 years is going to put a huge dent in anybody's agenda, whether it's the president's, whether it's the Democrats in Congress, whether it's the Republicans. Ain't going to be no money for nothing if we pour it all into Afghanistan. And when we first went into Afghanistan, We got their attention. People thought we were serious, but then we diverted our attention to Iraq and we lost the opportunity. And sometimes when you screw something up, you don't get a chance to fix it up on the second round. You have to assess not only is the policy effective, but do we have the instruments to carry it out? And if you don't, I mean, if you've got a nice shiny new car, but you don't have a set of keys to turn it on, you've got a problem.
Yeah.
Look, what Obie's saying there is, I cannot overstate its importance. He's saying, if it wasn't clear enough, $900 billion is almost the same exact amount of money that we need for health care. Okay? Now, and the crazy thing is, we've already raised the money, already in the House and the Senate bills. It's in the bills to pay for that $900 billion. So on the one side, you have health care for all Americans, okay, as best as we can. It's not a perfect bill by any stretch of the imagination. But you got health care that's going to apply to a lot more Americans, right? And it's already paid for. On the other side, you have $900 billion that is not paid for 10 more years of the Afghanistan war. Now, how does so-called deficit hawks, and I'm a deficit hawk, not like these fake conservatives and the fake deficit hawks who say, I care about the deficit only when it's social programs they don't want to pass. When it's other programs, when it's bloated defense spending, when it's everything else, they don't give a damn about the deficit, right? So how does spending that amount of money on a war for 10 years make any sense when you don't get any money back, when you could spend it on health care instead? And go ahead, ask Americans. I dare you. I triple dare you. What would you rather have, 10 more years of war in Afghanistan or health care for everybody? Go ahead, try it, Republicans. See how that works out for you. And you know what? Hey, Obama administration, try it. See how it works out for you. Here's how they're going to go. Health care. And that's already paid for in the bills. That, you know, putting those two things next to one another is exactly right. And that, because that is the real question. Where do we spend our money? Okay? And if you want to spend it on more wars instead of health care for everybody, I think you're crazy. And look, I'm telling you, a month ago I was in favor of the war. And I believe in that second round. Hey, we screwed this up and we got to get it right. But if you say to me, we're out of money and we can only pay for one, of course I'm going to pay for health care instead. And especially because that government in Afghanistan doesn't represent the people. It's a losing strategy. Do I want 10 more years of a war with a losing strategy or health care for all Americans? How stupid do you have to be to choose one rather than the other? To choose Afghanistan over health care? But yet, right now, that is exactly where we're headed.
Watch the live show at theyoungturks.com.